Überstundenkonten, flexible Arbeitszeiten, Gleitzeit, das sind in Deutschland die gängigsten Modelle, wenn es um das Thema Arbeitsverträge geht. Das heißt, ich als Arbeitnehmer kann, wenn ich bei einem neuen Unternehmen anfangen möchte, mit dem dann festlegen, auf welcher Grundlage mein Gehalt zum Beispiel fakturiert wird. Und nach wie vor ist die große Denke, die Anzahl der Stunden bestimmt die Qualität meiner Leistungen und entspricht somit auch meinem Qualifikationsprofil. Dass das auf Dauer nicht funktioniert und natürlich auch nicht stimmen kann, das sehen wir mittlerweile mit der New Work-Bewegung, die durchaus angetrieben wird durch Startups, aber mittlerweile auch in größeren Unternehmen ankommt. Und selbst Microsoft ist ganz groß dabei, wenn es darum geht, zu sagen, unsere Mitarbeiter können eigentlich arbeiten, wo sie wollen und wie sie wollen. Wir haben eine Vertrauensarbeitszeit und einen Vertrauensarbeitsort. Hauptsache, das Ergebnis stimmt. Mein Name ist Nadja und ich bin nicht nur die Gastgeberin dieses Podcasts, sondern auch selbst Geschäftsführerin eines kleinen Startups und wir haben uns für ein ganz besonderes Konzept entschieden, und zwar ROWE. Doch ROWE ist in Deutschland längst nicht bekannt. Einige Führungskräfte, die hin und wieder über den Tellerrand hinausschauen, werden das Konzept wahrscheinlich bereits kennen. Markus und ich, wir haben uns einfach die Bücher dazu geholt und sie durchgelesen und sind letztes Jahr in Kontakt getreten mit den Gründerinnen von ROWE. Und das ist ein amerikanisches Konzept. Sieht man auch hier wieder mal, die Amerikaner oder das Umland. Der Rest der Welt ist wieder mal ein bisschen schneller als wir, wobei ich sage, das ist auf gar keinen Fall ein Trend und wir wissen alle nicht, wo die Reise hingeht, aber wir werden in 10 Jahren auf jeden Fall nicht so arbeiten wie heute und ich finde das auch überhaupt nicht schlimm. Wir haben schon länger Kontakt mit Jody und Stacy, den Gründerinnen von ROWE, und sind sehr erfreut, dass wir euch heute ein Interview mit Jody zur Verfügung stellen können. Eins vorweg, das Interview ist auf Englisch. Wir haben dazu noch keine deutsche Version erstellt. Das heißt, diejenigen, die jetzt sagen, okay, ich bin eh schon nicht so der Freund von Interviews und dann das Ganze auf Englisch, schaltet einfach weiter. Nächste Woche gibt es eine neue Episode oder schaut, ob ihr vielleicht nicht eine andere Episode verpasst habt. Und allen anderen wünsche ich jetzt viel Spaß mit der Folge. Herzlich willkommen zu nuboRadio, der Office 365 Podcast für Unternehmen und Cloud-Worker. Hier bekommst du umsetzbare Tipps aus der Praxis
für die Praxis. Hi, wir sind die nuboRackers und wir helfen Unternehmen dabei, Office 365 erfolgreich und nachhaltig zu integrieren, den Prozess zu verschlanken und mehr Agilität zu erreichen.
Und zwar ohne Geld zu verbrennen und die Mitarbeiter im Change-Prozess zu verlieren. Und jetzt viel Spaß mit dieser Episode. Welcome everybody to a new episode of nuboRadio. My name is Nadia. I'm the host of the show and this is actually the very first recording of us talking English, our first international interview. And I'm actually very happy and so proud. I have a very special guest to the show. It's Jody Thompson. We are huge fans of your vision and your idea, which is results-only working environment, something that we are absolutely sure that is very important for our future because of the cloud technology that is now implemented in Germany and European companies as well. So I'm so happy, Jody, that you took the time. You take the time for talking with me about ROWE and spreading the vision and the mission about ROWE to our listeners. And before we dive into the topics and tell how we actually came to all this great vision, maybe just a couple words about you, Jody. Who are you? What are your projects? And what is actually your vision?
Well, thank you very much. I'm so excited to be on your podcast today and on nuboRadio. So thank you very much again. And I think this topic is very relevant for people all over the globe as they're thinking about the future of work and how to reinvent it to work better for today's workforce. Mm-hmm. So again, like you said, I am Jody Thompson, and I am one of the co-creators of the Results Only Work Environment, or ROWE, and author of Why Work Sucks and How to Fix It, and Why Managing Sucks and How to Fix It. My organization, Culture RX, is the premier provider of the results-only work environment implementation services. Mm-hmm. And we're currently working all over the globe on implementation of the results-only work environment. For example, we're working in Canada right now with Canada Housing and Mortgage Corporation implementing the results-only work environment across every role and every province, and including 2,000 people.
Oh, wow.
So the results-only work environment is, as you might imagine, or your reader or listeners might imagine, is a culture shift. So results-only work environment is a workforce system. And in this system, each person is 100% accountable to measurable results and 100% autonomous. Mm-hmm. It's not a flexibility program. So traditional flexibility programs are managed by managers, and work time and location are negotiable and relevant. But in a ROWE, accountability to measurable results is the only thing that is relevant and non-negotiable. We find that when people are trying to bring in cloud-based programs or things to help their workers become more collaborative and work better in today's, climate and landscape, they haven't taken time to think about their culture. They are still utilizing programs and policies from the 20th century to try to manage people instead of managing the work. And that's what we find is standard all across the world. Management practices haven't changed in 75 years.
Mm. I'm so happy that you say that because it's actually the 100% true. It's also our experience. We are working with our customers since many years. And actually, we are also change managers. So what happens currently, for example, in Germany as well, is that companies start rolling out all these cloud-based tools, next generation workplace projects and things like this. And actually, the one thing that we see is, of course, even if you set this up as a change project, it doesn't mean that the cultural change is actually already integrated in that. And of course, at the beginning, it seems to run very well. But the management also wants to see, hey, when we give people all these great tools, and actually, this is also very expensive, such a project like this. So when will we get the first results? And also some managers then expect people to work from any place, anywhere they want to. And actually, this is even something that Microsoft is promoting quite a lot. I don't know if you also monitor what Microsoft is doing. Also, what they announced is that their employees can work everywhere. They have trusted work times. So some companies start implementing this as well. But the feedback that we always get is that the results are not the same like they used to be. And the question that I ask people is, so how was the quality of the results that you're talking about or that you're missing at the moment? And what are you actually expecting? And then people don't even know, because people think, oh, now I'm allowed to work in the home office. But I struggle to get everything done because they're not even trained to work on their own or to manage themselves and being accountable for the results. So actually, this is really such an important topic. And I'm great that we can talk about this today. And maybe you can also guide us through this a little bit. Just maybe to tell you, we are also implementing ROWE in our company. With the books that you mentioned is actually something that Marcus and we have them in German version and also an English version, and we are really working with this. And what we found out when we started our company, hiring the first employees, is actually this is so different, and really you have to take the time because people are not used to work like this. What is your experience about this?
Yep. And so I have a few things to say. What's so interesting today about things like cloud-based tools is there actually technical changes that are brought into an organization. And what organizations have not done is they have not looked at, like you said, the culture, and the culture still operates like it's 1952. Yeah. So here's what I mean by that. They will say things like, yes, we let our people work from anywhere and anytime, but not everyone. We have certain roles and certain jobs that cannot be flexible. And so when people say those types of things, they really haven't changed their mindset or shifted their belief system about work. So people are not autonomous if they're told things like, you cannot work from home. On the flip side of that, the reason that people are having difficulty with results when they're working from home or from other locations is that measurable results are not crystal clear and have not been communicated to people, so they don't really know what they're supposed to be doing. So what they do instead is they revert back to how much time they put in, how much effort they put in, and look at how hard I'm working, instead of really understanding the value that they provide for the organization and knowing how to measure that. So when organizations are trying to implement the results-only work environment on their own, they run into a lot of difficulty because this is really hard, like you said, Nadia. It's very hard because it's not just allowing people to work in different locations. The second you say to somebody, we're going to let you do this, you've already not understood the results-only work environment. So when we talk to organizations about their readiness to implement results-only work environment, we say to them, you need to ask yourself these questions if you want to start implementing and having Culture RX help you with that. Do our leaders have the courage to move beyond the status quo? Are we committed to invest resources in the appropriate training and sustain support so we can be successful? Are we able to invest emotional energy in the change long term? And are we ready to examine our own deeply held beliefs about work? So it really is a disruptive social change that requires people to focus on a completely different way of thinking and really commit to that. And we find that organizations would rather manage people's time and place instead of really getting clear on how to manage the actual work.
Yeah. But so let's pretend you have a customer and they say, yes, we will do this and we will take all the effort and we will do this, invest, put our heart into this project, let's say, because yes, it can be also very emotional, guiding your teams through this process, I have to say. But what can I expect once I'm gone through this process and I've done this ROWE journey? What are the benefits of this? Why should we do it?
Well, there's so many benefits of the results-only work environment. I mean, really, when you see organizations go through the actual certification process of being ROWE certified, you're going to see that people are more engaged, loyal, and motivated. Productivity and business results improve. And since measurable results are clear, communication is never ambiguous, and there is a high level of trust. People experience less stress and report less work-family conflict. So we also see, which is really important, is we see a stark decrease in voluntary turnover rates. So people are very attracted to this type of work platform, and they want to do good work. They're intrinsically motivated to make sure that they're providing value to the organization. And if any of your listeners have read the book Drive by Daniel Pink, he talks about autonomy, mastery, and purpose being the platform that is the motivator for people. And results-only work environment provides that for people, so entire cultures can have that feeling of autonomy, mastery, and purpose.
Okay. What we will do for all of our listeners now or at the end of the show, we will put a link to all the books that you mentioned. So, of course, your books, the two that you've mentioned at the beginning, and of course, the one you mentioned now, because I have to say, for me, this is new, but we will put the link for everybody, and I will probably order it right after our show, using Amazon. Yeah, but I think you're welcome. Yeah. So I have to say, for us, we've already experienced some of the results and also some of the benefits. But the one thing is really, the struggling part is really to start. So the questions that you mentioned are really helpful, I have to say, because I think I really need to think about, and also from the management perspective, you really have to think about what can you expect. And this is so different in terms of the regular apps driven projects that we have, and all the projects that are running at the moment. So this is really, it's great having these tips and the questions. Can you maybe tell us how a ROWE implementation or certification, so did I understand you correct? If your customers start working with you, they are actually getting certified by implementing the new structure in the company?
Yes, Nadia, that's true. When we work with organizations, they go through a proprietary process of implementation with us. And so because we are the creators of the results-only work environment, we have the system that we take organizations through so that they can become successful and know all of the moving pieces and parts of the results-only work environment. A lot of people read our book, Why Work Sucks, and they have an idea of what the, overall vision of a results-only work environment is. But the actual implementation of it is not that easy. There's a lot of things that people miss, and it's just those simple things that make the results-only work environment really work that we use in the implementation process. It's a 3-step process. The first part is we help organizations with readiness. We make sure we understand their work, the type of work they do, the different divisions, everything about them. And we make sure leadership is ready to lead this change. Then people go through the actual training implementation process. And that's 5 modules that they go through to actually flip their mindset so that they're actually going through a disruptive change and having to think about things completely different than they did before. After we take them through that journey, then we're in sustain mode where we help them continue to evolve. It's difficult for a culture to overcome inertia, and it's difficult for people to let go of deeply held beliefs. So they go through a coaching process with us for many months so that they don't slip backwards and they can continue overcoming inertia.
Yeah, okay, and how long does a project like this approximately take? Is there something where you say, when we look back to our last couple projects, is it like 6 months? Is it 1.5 years? Is there something you can say, it takes this and that time?
Yes, I can do that. Nadia, there's all different sizes of organizations that come in and work with us. For example, the organization we're working with in Canada has 2,000 people. It's taking us about 3 years to work with them to make sure that they're sustaining the results-only work environment. They started out with prototypes. So they tested it out in 3 different areas so they could see how it worked in their culture and understand it more. Then once they understood it, they went into full implementation. We're soon going to be in sustain mode where we're helping them hold the culture and move it forward. There's also smaller organizations, small to mid-sized businesses. The implementation process is shorter because they're smaller, but it's interesting that it's still, no matter what size the organization is, it takes people a while to really adopt the mindset. So people report to us saying it takes them individually 6 months to a year to really feel like they let go of the old belief system. So when you think about that across, say, 2,000 people, people are going at different paces. Some people adopt it really quickly. Some people take longer. But in the end, you look at it as a social mob of people all moving in the same direction. And they all eventually get there. Okay. It's just at different speeds.
Are there differences between the branches?
It's interesting. People ask us a lot of times about work roles. So I'm going to just give you an example. We've implemented results-only work environment on a manufacturing line, a retail floor, a child care center, call center. This idea is not just for office workers who people say, well, this role can work from home. Results-only work environment has nothing to do with work location. So it's interesting when people say, well, we have this kind of role and that kind of role, so it couldn't work, which isn't true. So people might have different type of work that they do. Their role might be different, but the mindset shift is the same across everybody. It's how you look at your work. So you're autonomous and accountable, and your manager does not manage you anymore. They manage the work. They become a results coach. So they're not saying, yes, you can work from home on a Thursday, or, it's okay for you to, leave early on a Tuesday because you have kids, or you're a receptionist, you can't work from home. That language does not exist in a results-only work environment. Managers do not manage people anymore.
And this is so hard, I have to say. When I used to be an employee and I had my first experience with a familiar structure, at that time, my boss was also saying, as long as the results are good, as long as the job is done and the tasks and the customers are taken care of, you can do whatever you want to because you got all your tools and you can work wherever you want to. So for me, from an employee perspective, this was this was pure freedom. And I have to say I loved it, but I'm also a person who is really taking care. I like to have good results. I'm very success-oriented in terms of results, let's say, but this is my nature. And now being on the other side, the manager or actually the CEO, it's, I have to say, a completely different perspective because on one hand, I'm so convinced by this concept, but on the other hand, guiding your employees to that status is really hard work. And sometimes you also have to reflect and think about, oh no, now you have this strange mindset and now you're thinking into a completely wrong direction. So even from the other side, I have to say it's really difficult. So it's great if you say you really guide the people and the departments. But what I would like to know is how does management behave, or what feedback do you get from management, and what feedback do you actually get from the employees during these phases?
Well, it's so interesting that you asked that question, Nadia, because you're right. From the manager mindset, this is very difficult. In fact, we found that the one thing that's the biggest challenge for us in any organization is management. And the reason I say that is because they're used to being permission granters. So, for example, in what you were saying, that you had a manager that said to you, your work is really good, you have the tools that you need, so you can work from anywhere.
Yeah.
That's permission granting. And it's difficult for people to go from permission granting to performance guiding and just focusing on that. So what happens with managers is at first they feel resistant to it because they don't know what their new role is going to look like. And they're used to really controlling people. Now the people are very excited about this idea because they want to be treated like adults. They want to be clear about their measurable results, and they want to make decisions every day about how they spend their time. So they don't want flexibility. They really want control over their time. And that's what results-only work environment gives people. What it does, Nadia, is it changes the relationship between managers and people that do work. It's no longer an authoritarian structure. It's a level playing field where everybody is clear about measurable results. And if they need assistance, they go to their results coach for help. So it's very different. And that, like I said, that whole idea of going from being permission granters to performance guiders requires a belief system change, language change. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not a flip of a switch. It takes a long time. But that's why I was talking about the process we take people through. We have a process that helps people overcome those feelings and thoughts and beliefs that they had before, and it's systematic. So people have the tools to overcome it, and they can work with each other to do that. So it's not easy, like we were saying before, and you've experienced it yourself. It's not easy to change your behavior about how you look at your own employees.
And the communication part that you mentioned, this is actually also something you really have to work to work on, because you just get to the point where you see, okay, this was not the result that I was expecting, or it's not the result that we were actually talking about. And then you question yourself, did we actually talk about this? So you really have to be, but you learn so much
Right.
about communication. And of course, you have this also management by objectives, and to make sure that the target, the goal, and what the results are described clearly, and also the goals. But I still, the experience we make quite often, even with other customers, not only internally, is just really the communication part is so difficult at that point. And you really have to take the time, and you have to communicate a lot more at the beginning. That's the feeling I have, I have to say.
Yes, absolutely. Communication is key.
Mm-hmm.
And we like to say that nothing is ambiguous. What we find in workplaces is there's a lot of communication that sounds like this. Can you get me that as soon as possible? And what's interesting about a statement like, can you get me that as soon as possible, is that it creates a lot of stress. What does as soon as possible mean? 5 minutes, 10 minutes, tomorrow, next week? And so people are always feeling like they're reacting to things instead of having the conversation around, when do you really need that? And negotiating an exact time. So when you do that with people, you actually create an environment where everybody's clear. They know exactly when the work needs to be delivered. They talk about what the work looks like. It's all objective. And then we know when we're delivering things, which builds trust between people. Things like ASAP, sometime next week, end of the day doesn't mean anything. You know, the end of the workday, when is that? 5 p.m., 8 p.m., midnight? So people are just not clear. Communication is something that changes radically in a results-only work environment and really brings a lot more clarity and respect between people and trust.
So when you work with the teams and the groups, do you actually coach the management in a separate group from the team members, or do you then combine everything? How does that look like?
Oh, Nadia, that's a great question. When we take people through training, we do it this way. We take the whole division or team together through the implementation. Then we take managers by themselves. So that was a good question, because it's very difficult for managers to go from that idea of management to being a coach. So we work with them separately after they've gone through the implementation. First, they have to understand ROWE, and they have to understand all the pieces of how to make a results-only work environment work. And then we talk about their role and how they're going to help really build that culture of autonomy and accountability by their own behaviors.
Okay. And so what I imagine is when you have the workshops with the managers and the teams in one sitting, probably then this is a huge learning for the whole group, because when you are trained in business school and also through your whole career being this permission granter, like you said, giving permission, manage the person instead of the job or the task. Yeah. And then I think you have probably you have lots of aha moments. Let's say this is how we call it in Germany, and you really realize we have to communicate completely different. And from a management perspective, you really learn that actually sometimes what you tell to your team member so your expectation is really something completely different from what they understand. And actually just writing an email and thinking that it should be clear now is actually most of the times not true.
Right. I agree. There's so much ambiguity, and people assume, and a lot of times managers assume, that people understand the work. And instead of having those conversations like you're talking about and really having a two-way dialogue so everybody's clear, and then being clear on the measure, that is so key. And I think that when you have time and location in your mind, where are people working from? How many hours are they working? How much effort are they putting in? When you have those things in your brain, you don't get clear with people about the work or the measure.
how do you react when customers or the teams say, we don't have time to communicate that much?
Well,
Okay.
I try not to laugh.
But did you have that situation in the past?
Oh, yes, many times. You know, it's funny that people have a lot of time to communicate not clearly. So what we do in our training is we help people start taking steps just every day to communicate more clearly with what do you need and when do you need it. And so people say they don't have time because they're constantly running after things ASAP.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? People are, I need that right now. And so people are frazzled and they're overworked and stressed out and they feel rushed and all those things. If we start getting clear with people and they start getting clear with us, we negotiate that together. It's amazing how much more time we perceive we have. A lot of our time is spent in with things that are not clear. And so we chase after things and do things, and then we have to do rework and start over, and it wasn't right. And now you need to get that to me even more ASAP than you did before. You know, it's broken. It's completely broken. And that's because we have the focus on people putting in time and where are they working from. We have to get rid of that idea and start getting clear in our communication and our measurable expectations.
Yeah, yeah. And I think we also have to be very careful and put a little bit more awareness to the tools, how they impact actually our communication. Because, when I'm working or when I'm in a meeting, I see lots of people still writing using some instant messaging tools like Skype for Business or using WhatsApp on the phone. And these are also tools that have big impact on the way we communicate. So things like ASAP and can you send me a now? And yes, so actually we communicate with less words, and again then everybody is just starting to assume and the result is not the one that we wanted.
Right.
So with this we also have to be very careful. That's what I think about it.
Absolutely. You know, what's interesting is the company we're working with in Canada right now, they do use Skype for Business, but the way they use it now is much different because their mindset has shifted. So when they know that they have to be clear about something and they have to communicate with each other to make sure it's clear and measurable, then the tool actually works really well. Also, they don't do things like say in there, I'm working from home, or they don't alert people that they're green. In other words, I'm available. Those kind of things are a throwback. It's just taking the tool and putting over it the institution of work from the 20th century. So they utilize the tool in a different way that's much more dynamic and probably what the creators of that tool were thinking, but the culture wasn't responding to it that way. So now utilizing the tool differently with a different mindset makes everything work.
Okay, and how do they actually utilize it? Can you go a little bit more into detail?
Yeah, so for example, before when they would use it as a tool to let people know where they were working from.
Okay, now I know what you mean. Okay.
And now they don't do that because you don't need to know where people are working from. And when they want to use the instant messaging piece of it or whatever that looks like, their communication is very clear. They're always letting people know what they need and when they need it. In terms of how they utilize it as a meeting tool, so when people are meeting together, it's interesting how they're utilizing that now because they don't see meetings necessarily as the way to get work done. Before, they would just have a lot of meetings, right? And people would get on the meeting, and this is behavior all over the world. You get on the meeting and nobody can see you. And the meeting has no value. It's a waste of your time. So what do you do during the meeting? You do other work. So you're not really listening. You're not really participating. But at least you're showing you're there. And so everybody's like, well, at least that person was there. It's such a waste of time. So now when they're using that tool, they're first asking themselves, is this the right way for us to get the work done? If it is, we'll schedule a Skype call. But if it isn't, we'll do it a different way. So they don't just have, before where you'd have meetings in a meeting room all the time. Now we've taken that and we've done the same thing on Skype. We're still having wasted time and wasted effort and wasted money and wasted everything because our mindset hasn't shifted.
Mm-hmm. And what I really like, you have dedicated a whole chapter on that meeting topic in the book. And this is one of my favorite chapters. Actually, this is something we have already implemented already quite successful, I have to say, in our company.
Mm-hmm.
And when we tell people how few meetings we have in the month, I have to say,
Yeah.
no one can believe us that we are running our business successfully, or that we achieve the project goals on customer side. So this is a chapter, or the whole book, really. I can absolutely recommend it. I will link this into the show notes because, so like you mentioned, you have to think about, when do we do a meeting? Does it make sense for me to actually attend if I can't provide any value and things like this? Many things you should actually consider and think about before you even initiate a meeting schedule and take people's time, let's say.
Right, exactly right.
Yeah. Yeah, so this was one of our first lessons and one of the first and most important implementations we did in our company, and actually a huge booster for our productivity, I have to say.
Yes.
So thank you for that and for the tips that we actually just worked at, even just with the books. But I'm also very happy to get all the tips from you now in the interview. I'm learning during our session now.
Good, and I hope your listeners are gathering some information too.
Absolutely. Can you maybe tell us how you and your team, how are you actually working? Do you also use cloud-based tools? I'm sure, of course, you're working with your own concept, but how does it look like? How do you communicate? What tools are you using?
So that's a good question, Nadia, in terms of how we use tools. First of all, because we're a results-only work environment, we don't have an office. I don't know where anybody is at any given time. So I have to communicate with people all the time using technology. And the tools that I use include Skype. I use voicemail, texting, any email. So it just, for me, the tools are a way for me to let people know what I need and when I need it. And have communication around that. So that's how I use the tools. And what's really great today is we have tools to be able to do that without having to necessarily be in the same place at the same time. Now, some of our work that we do together, actually, we have to be at a certain location at a certain time, like when we're doing training. And we communicate around that through texting, email, voicemail, whatever tool makes sense at the time to get the information to the other person.
Okay, great. And so maybe also a few other, or maybe one question. So if one of our listeners is interested in that topic, we will also provide contact details, if that's okay for you, to your website, and we will put on all the links to the show notes. Do you have maybe one or two tips for people who are now getting the idea and think about, hey, this makes actually sense?
Yeah, I would love to talk a little bit about tips. So I know a lot of people out there have probably heard of the results-only work environment and have done a little research. And just like you, Nadia, they are being successful in taking some of these ideas into the organization. What I want people to think about as they're trying to, do this a little bit on their own, I want them to think about some of the things that they say so that they can understand whether they're getting closer to the results-only work environment or further away. So I'm going to give you some examples of those things. So if you're saying things like, we're a row, however, not all jobs can participate, you know you're getting further away from it.
Mm-hmm.
Some meetings are mandatory. That's not true. People who have location-specific jobs cannot participate in a row. That's also not true. So if those things are in your brain still, you haven't understood the results-only work environment.
Mm-hmm.
If you use row as freely as telework, remote work, or flexible work, like you say, I'm going to row on Tuesday, you don't understand the results-only work environment. So I know you already know these things. And I think as your listeners are researching this more, just listen to yourself and listen to what's in your brain. If you still think it's polite to let your coworkers know where you're working from that day, you still don't understand the results-only work environment.
Mm-hmm.
So those are some of the things to just think about. But really, examining your own deeply held beliefs about the way you think work needs to happen is the first step. Really look at that. And of course, as you know, we're here to help organizations get certified in the results-only work environment and really take all of the tools and tricks and tips that they need to actually make this work.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that. And I think the more you work with ROWE and you try to implement it, and the more you have progress on this journey, you will always get to the point. That's the reason why I also just want to then provide the information and contact details, where you also need to maybe have a partner that you can talk to, because in my opinion, or what we have experienced so far, is really there are some points where you really need a counterpart where you can discuss a little bit about the situation that you're in, because working on that mind shift on your own is really not that easy.
No, it is hard,
yeah.
And we like to support people and help them. So
yeah. So this is also one of the reasons why we contacted you and Stacy, because we also said, we know the books, we are trying to implement it already, and then you get into certain situations where you say, I wish I could actually get some more information, or someone I can actually talk to. So I think it's great that you really support people and that you're working with them for such a period of time. Because the culture of a company is really it's grown historically. Companies change through the years and decades. But the behavior and the beliefs that you have internally, not only your personal beliefs, but there are also internal beliefs and some rules that you just know that they are there, but it's actually not your personal one. It's just part of the company. And this is something where you just need support. And this is really an organizational project that you're working on at that point. Yeah.
Yes, we want people to be successful, so we're here to help.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that. Yeah. Jody, what we do in our interviews is we ask our partners just 5 questions, a little surprise. But don't worry, it's just actually just to get also some insights, another perspective during the from your side itself. So maybe so just a couple questions. It's just 5. We ask them to all of our interview partners. So if you would just complete the sentences, and one of them is working in the future and in the cloud to me actually means.
It means being liberated from the old idea of how work needs to happen. It's liberation.
Mm-hmm. Great. Future to me looks like.
The future to me looks like every single person being able to live their life to the fullest, to work and live in a happy manner, and be connected to the people they want to be connected to, and live in a way that makes sense.
Oh, that's great. Great, thank you. What type of app did you install recently and why?
I tried to install Skype for Business and realized that there were some things missing that I needed, so I am still researching that.
Or maybe I can help you with that afterwards.
I can help on that.
Was it because of my links that I sent to you?
No,
Okay.
no. I had some other issues with it. So.
Okay, great. Yeah, let me know if I can support you with that afterwards. Okay.
Thank you.
Is there something you would like, or just like a recommendation you have for our listeners?
The recommendation I have for your listeners is to never give up. If you have an idea that you think is a good idea, keep pursuing it. There's a lot of things that come in our way and there's a lot of hurdles, but if you really believe in something, don't give up.
That's good. That's good. And you can take this for any situation and everything in your life. Thank you. Okay, Jody, we've come to the end of our interview. I want to thank you so much. For me, it was a lot of value, I have to say, and a lot of new tips and insights. I'll talk about this with Marcus right afterwards. Thank you for providing so much information. And is there something, so if people want to contact you, how can I do this? Tell our listeners how we can contact you. What's the best way reaching out?
All right. Thank you. Well, first of all, I was happy to be on your show today. Thank you for that. And if people want to contact us, they can go to our website contact page. And our website is GoRowe, GROWE.com.
Okay, perfect. I'll link that as well, of course, to make it as easy as possible for the listeners to get there. Yeah, so thank you a lot. I hope we will hear very soon. I'll hear from you very soon. And I wish you a nice afternoon. For us here, it's already in the evening, early evening. For you, it's a little earlier of the day. Yeah, have a nice day. Have a nice weekend, Jody. And see you or hear you soon.
Thank you very much.